a place where we acknowledge the power of our minds, the intricate dance of thought, and our boundless potential to shape the world around us. We often live in a world of rushing, hurried moments where our attention is pulled in every direction. Yet there's a different way, a path that invites us to pause, observe, and truly engage with our experiences. I want to share a journey, a path of discovery that revolves around the art of thinking. Not just thinking as in the casual, everyday kind, but a mindful, intentional, and deeply engaged form of thought. It's a way of thinking that has been embodied by one of the most famous fictional characters of all time, Sherlock Holmes. Not just a detective, but an exemplar of the power of observation, deduction, and imagination. Let's begin by looking at how we see the world around us. Do we simply see, or do we truly observe? There's a world of difference. To see is to allow images to enter your field of vision, but to observe is an active, intentional process. It means knowing what to look for, how to look, and what to make of what you've seen. It's about directing your attention with purpose, about focusing on the details that truly matter. Let's consider a simple example. Imagine you walk into a room. You see the furniture, the colors, the people. But to observe is to note the small details, the subtle cues that others might miss. The way a person holds their body, the slight tremor in their hand, the type of shoes they're wearing. All of these things can speak volumes if you know how to look. This kind of observation is not passive. It's an active search, a deliberate choosing of where to place your focus. It's about being present, about making conscious choices with your attention. Think of it like this. If we allow the world to rush in unfiltered, like water through an open dam, our minds become cluttered with irrelevant data. Instead, we should strive to be like curators of our own minds, selecting only the most meaningful details. We must be selective about our attention, choosing what to focus on. What we choose to notice has the potential to shape the landscape of our mind. It's like choosing furniture for a room. Each piece affects the entire space. Every detail we choose to note can become a future element in our thought processes. And this, in turn, impacts our future choices and understanding. The scientific method isn't just for scientists in lab coats. It's a powerful framework for thinking, for problem solving, for navigating the world. You start with observation, then create a hypothesis to explain those observations. You test that hypothesis, adjusting it if necessary, and then you start the process all over again. We can train our minds to work like this automatically, applying this method in our daily lives. This way of thinking involves more than just logic and facts. It also requires imagination. Imagination is that space in our minds where we can play with our thoughts, where we can combine ideas in new ways. It's the space where we can consider the what-ifs and the could-be's. It is essential for any kind of creative thinking, innovation, or insight. Why is imagination so critical? Because it enables us to see beyond the obvious. It lets us create scenarios in our heads, playing out possible outcomes and anticipating what might happen. Holmes himself was a master of this. He didn't just look at the facts. He used his imagination to consider alternative possibilities. He was willing to consider explanations that others might dismiss as impossible. Remember, imagination isn't about creating things out of thin air. It's grounded in our experiences, in the observations we've made. It's about taking the data from our experiences, combining it with our knowledge base, and creating something new and unique. It's a structured form of creativity that's essential for good decision-making. But there's a challenge. Our minds are prone to taking shortcuts. We tend to jump to conclusions, to trust our initial impressions, often without much conscious thought. We rely on System Watson, the automatic and intuitive part of our minds, which helps us navigate daily life, but isn't always logical. This can be useful in many instances, but it can also lead us to make errors, to miss important information, or to fall into the trap of bias. System Watson makes assumptions, relies on past experiences, and is easily influenced by our emotions. This is a habit that can keep us from engaging our higher brain functions. When faced with a problem or a new situation, our initial reaction is often to jump to a conclusion, to quickly form an opinion. Our minds are wired to do just this, to make snap judgments based on subtle cues we might not even be aware of. We might, for example, judge someone's trustworthiness based on their appearance. But these initial impressions are, more often than not, incomplete and biased. We must actively resist these automatic reactions. We need to slow down, take a step back, and engage System Holmes, the more analytical, reflective part of our mind. It's about being skeptical, not just of the world around us, but of our own minds. We must ask ourselves the following questions. What has influenced my first impression? Is something superfluous to the matter at hand influencing my judgment? Do I need to adjust my initial impressions? We have to be willing to challenge our own perceptions, to question our assumptions. This is not always easy. Our brains prefer certainty, not ambiguity. We often choose the path of least resistance, going with the flow instead of exerting the effort required for mindful thought. But it's in that effort that growth lies. Motivation is key to this process. We have to want to think like Holmes. We must commit to being mindful and present. Motivation is so essential that it can even influence performance on cognitive tasks. Motivation is not merely a whim, but a powerful drive that fuels our engagement and propels us toward understanding. There's a crucial role in the practice. You can't just read about thinking, you have to practice it. Thinking is a skill, like playing an instrument or learning a new language. It requires constant effort, deliberate practice, and a willingness to push beyond your comfort zone. This kind of practice isn't just about improving your ability to solve problems, it's about changing the way you perceive the world. As we practice these mindful ways of thinking, something interesting begins to happen. What was once a taxing, conscious effort becomes more and more natural. Our brains, with practice, learn to make the effortful effortless. What was once the purview of System Holmes begins to sneak into System Watson. But it is also here that we must remain vigilant. Because once something becomes easy, once it becomes a habit, we are prone to do it mindlessly. We may have developed a Holmesian habit, but if we do not continue to challenge ourselves, it will become just another habit, vulnerable to the very biases it was intended to overcome. This means that the journey of mindful thinking isn't a destination, but a continuous process of engagement. The better we are, the more we've learned, the more powerful the urge is to just rest. We might feel like we deserve it, instead of realizing that it is the greatest disservice we can do ourselves. This is where overconfidence sneaks in. Overconfidence can be a dangerous trap. We can become so enamored of our own skills that we may discredit important information, even when it should be obvious. The illusion of validity can grow stronger, leading us to think we know more than we do. To guard against it, we must remember, past success and experience can lead to errors in thought. Overconfidence increases with information, even if that information doesn't add to our knowledge in a meaningful way. We must remain aware of the biases that may cloud our judgments. This awareness is a cornerstone of the Holmesian method. It's what allows Holmes to solve cases that others may deem impossible. His constant self-questioning, his refusal to settle for the easy answer, and his commitment to always learning and improving are what set him apart. So how do we keep our minds sharp and ready? How do we remain open to new ideas and keep complacency at bay? The answer is not about having an enormous amount of information. It's about knowing how to handle the information you already have. It's about applying logic and imagination, while being motivated, engaged, and always willing to challenge your assumptions. One powerful tool is distance, and creating it from whatever problem is at hand. When you find yourself overly involved, take a step back. There are several ways to create this space. Change your physical surroundings. Go for a walk or sit in a different room. Engage in an unrelated activity. It could be something physical or creative, something that isn't overly challenging, but that still engages your mind. Engage in mindfulness practices like meditation, which can clear the clutter from our minds and allow us to gain a new perspective. Meditation, contrary to popular belief, isn't always about having an empty mind. We can focus on specific mental images or goals, as long as our mind is free of distractions. You could even picture yourself as a fly on the wall, observing the situation from a distance. This provides us the detachment we need to see things more clearly. Another invaluable tool is curiosity and playfulness. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to explore new ideas, or to engage in creative activities. You can start with just a simple what if. Cultivate your curiosity and never lose that sense of wonder at the complexity of the world around you. As Holmes himself said, the game is afoot. In addition, never underestimate the value of keeping a record of your choices. Record the process when you make a decision, documenting your observations, inferences, and lines of inquiry. Then revisit your records to analyze what worked and what didn't. This process of reflection can greatly accelerate the learning process. Now let's consider the role of habit. It's useful. It frees us up to think strategically rather than getting bogged down with all the little details. But it's perilously close to mindlessness. Once something becomes easy, it also becomes automatic. We must continue to be aware of our habits and not give in to the temptation of complacence. Habits, once so useful, can also become traps. Our brains are amazing at adapting. They can rewire themselves and form new neural connections. Our brains can learn and change, even into old age. There is no reason we can't adopt the Holmesian approach to thinking. Even if you've spent years in the grip of Watson, know that you can still become more Holmesian. But we also must acknowledge the challenges of the modern world, of our digital age. We are bombarded with more information than ever. Our minds are under constant pressure to process the flood of data. This creates an opportunity and a challenge. We have instant access to a wealth of information that would have been unimaginable in Conan Doyle's day. We've expanded our storage space, but the curatorial process, what to keep and what to toss, becomes increasingly difficult. We must learn to curate our attics better than ever before. We need to decide what information to store and what to ignore. It is about quality over quantity. The power is not in having all the information, but in knowing how to find it when we need it. And finally, we must never forget the role of others in shaping our thinking. Holmes is not an island unto himself. He is continually stimulated and challenged by his companion, Dr. Watson. This shows the power of diverse perspectives and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who challenge your assumptions. It's by listening to others that we can see the gaps in our own thinking and correct our course. So as we stand here today, let us commit to the lifelong journey of mindful thinking. Let us be active observers, imaginative thinkers, and willing students of our own minds. Let us use the scientific method and always seek to challenge ourselves. Let's practice these habits until they become second nature, always being mindful of our tendency to fall back into Watson mode. Let us embrace distance and curiosity and seek input from those around us. By doing so, we will not only improve our ability to solve problems, but also to navigate the complexities of life with greater clarity, purpose, and wisdom. We'll become more like Holmes and less like Watson, and we can be in greater control of our minds and hence of our lives. Thank you. Let me also leave you with some key concepts and practices we have discussed, summarized for your reference. Observation. Active, intentional attention to detail, distinguishing it from passive seeing. Mindful attention. Deliberately choosing what to focus on, being present in the moment. The scientific method. A framework for thinking involving observation, hypothesis, testing, and revision. Imagination. The ability to create new ideas based on experiences, an essential part of problem solving. System Holmes versus System Watson. System Holmes, analytical, reflective. System Watson, automatic, intuitive. Motivation, a key component to engaging in mindful thought. Must want to think like Holmes. Deliberate practice, constant effort to improve thinking skills, making them more natural and effortless. Distance, creating space from the problem, allowing new perspectives. Curiosity, inquisitiveness about the world and how things work. Reflection, reviewing decisions and the thought process, learning from experiences. Overconfidence, the peril of thinking you know more than you do, must always challenge ourselves. Habits, useful tools, but prone to mindlessness if we don't remain vigilant. Curating our mind attics, the art of choosing what information to store and what to discard. Importance of others, challenge yourself by engaging with diverse perspectives. Now let's reflect on what we have discussed today. We've talked about the power of observation, of really seeing, not just looking. We've explored the importance of a scientific approach to the mind, to the ability to form hypotheses and test them and revise them. We have discovered that imagination is not just a flight of fancy, but it's a crucial part of any kind of innovation. We've also acknowledged the challenges that life throws at us. The constant distractions, the rush of information, and the risk of biases that can lead us down the wrong path. So let us leave today not just inspired, but also with a clear idea of the path ahead. The journey of mindful thinking is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It requires effort and intention, and a willingness to constantly learn, grow, and challenge ourselves. Let me ask you, where will you begin? What is one thing that you can change in how you see the world around you? What one step are you willing to take to be more like Holmes and less like Watson? What will you do right now to begin your journey to a more mindful and intentional life?